check the YouTube feed, make sure this is actually streaming. Indeed it is. Perfect. All right, let's log on. And there it is. All right, I'm just going to type a little note that says, hey folks, office hours. Office hours are live, and I'll be here until 6:30. Until 7. There we go. We are live for another week of streaming office hours. At this point, every Tuesday of the month, I'm going to have an office hours session. The first and third Tuesdays are going to be streaming, and the second and fourth Tuesdays are going to be in North Hollywood at Republic of Pie on Magnolia Boulevard. So I'm here to answer any questions folks have about independent film, about the work we do at 8-Sided Films, or about anything else that strikes their fancy. And we've got half an hour unless somebody comes in. I don't really have sort of a side topic planned, but I will call everybody's attention to the fact that Dan Hegarty and I, Dan's the composer that we work with at 8-Sided Films. He did the score for the Starmind record and for the SAS Times Acceleration Quantum Theory episodes. And he's an old college friend, somebody I've known for years. And Dan and myself have been working on a podcast called The Loudmouth Report, in which we basically holler about all of the things that Hollywood could be doing more effectively. All the things that are counter to the basic habits of successful show business that Hollywood has fallen prey to over the last, really since the 90s. And we call attention to those things. So this week's podcast features rock star VK Lynn, who's a friend of mine and Dan's, and is somebody I've known for about a year. She's an extremely, she's an excellent show person. She's a wonderful musician. She's full of craft when it comes to her music, and at the same time, she's also very, very good at community building. And I would listen to anything VK has to say. And it's 2 hours of Dan and me talking her up. If you want to check it out, it's at soundcloud.com/The Loudmouth Report. And the week before, Dan and I sort of introduced the show. We talk about two basic principles that we sort of wind up in conversation about all the time. One of which is the need to build a show business community, which is something a lot of folks neglect in their careers, and the other of which, when it's frankly why we're doing the show, is to bring our community together, get people talking to one another, introduce our audience to people that we know, introduce people we know to one another, and then the other half of it is a conversation that we both wind up having with a lot of folks who ask us for opportunities in one way or another, which is that it's too hard to create these things for yourself. It's too hard to put in the work that frankly Dan and I are putting in every single day. Which is a ridiculous comment to make to me, specifically because I've been learning to live with a traumatic brain injury for the last 3.5 years. So my response is always something to the effect of, if I can do it, you can certainly do it. And I don't want to hear about how hard it is. So that's something we get into on the podcast as well. And again, you can check it out at soundcloud.com/The Loudmouth Report. I think over the next few weeks, we've got some guests that folks are going to take a lot away from. I've got some guests lined up over the next few weeks that I think will be equally gratifying, and I expect folks will glean, at the very least, some entertainment from listening to Dan and I banter. So that's what that's all about. I've got an 8-sided blog coming up in the next day or two that will be posted here on YouTube about the upcoming closing of a show that I wrote for Tyler Seipel to direct, which has been staged at the Stuart Rogers Studios in North Hollywood, California, called The Dream Factory. And I'll leave all the, sort of ruminations to the blog itself, but it's been a fantastic run. The cast has done a magnificent job. Tyler, of course, did a great job, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have seen it staged. I think it's been good for the audience and certainly for us. So that's exciting. And what else would we like to talk about? Well, I'm just sitting here waiting for someone to come by, ask me some questions about show business. So I perhaps could focus on other work, or I could find something to discuss with you. Let me, just to make sure we don't have any streaming issues, let me make sure that I'm closing all of my other windows. That's actually probably a pretty important thing to do. So, what else is there to talk about? The brain injury update is that I've started through Social Security, I've started cognitive and speech therapy, which is a process that begins with a whole lot of seemingly simple tests on paper that are designed to isolate specific kinds of logic and specific kinds of reasoning to try and pin down exactly where the brain damage is. And it's been an extremely illuminating process to finally start hammering down the answers to these questions. I've been living with my brain injury for 3.5 years. I haven't had any kind of testing like this in the past, and every time I run into a problem with my mental stamina in some regard or another, it's always, for me, just been a matter of pushing through it, and I tend to get very frustrated and irritated with my fogginess and my exhaustion and my cognitive fatigue when it comes up, just because I don't understand where it's coming from. And I'm sure, like a lot of folks, I think to myself, well, I've got my intelligence, I've got my reasoning skills, I shouldn't have any problems. And if I do have a problem, I sort of assumed that it was a reflection just on my overall ability to push through adversity. And being able to get a much clearer sense and a much clearer map of what kinds of cognitive problems are going to cause me trouble and what kinds of cognitive problems are going to be easier for me really helps manage my energy level, and it helps manage my day much more effectively. So just even that process has been extremely valuable. And I've maintained all my physical therapy practices in the meantime. So in the gym, I'm working through all the exercises that I learned with my physical therapist and looking to build more concretely the connection between my brain and my body, and give my brain better tools for sort of mapping out movements. And that's, it's exhausting work. It's really tiring. And in terms of how it pays off, at the end of the day, my goal, both for the physical therapy and for the cognitive therapy, is to ensure that I've got the stamina when it comes to the set work and stamina when it comes to festivals, especially, because one of the things that definitely tuckers me out faster than anything else is chaotic noise, chaotic motion, bodies moving away from me and towards me over long distances, and just a lot of things to keep track of. Literally, having more bodies around me exhausts me. Having more bodies moving in different directions around me exhausts me. Having lots of different kinds of voices around me exhausts me. And on set, it's manageable because I can build the workflow and build the decision-making process so that I'm sort of the core of the solar system and people orbit around me. So if you're having a camera issue, you're going to wind up talking to the camera department. If you're having a costume issue, you're going to wind up talking to the costume department. That's not so much of an issue. And then the people that come to me are the people who need information from me. So I'm very good at organizing that on set and managing that. When you're at a festival, you need to be providing everybody with your full attention in a scattershot sort of cascade of interactions. And then as those interactions unfold, eventually, if you're a filmmaker, you find yourself on a stage talking to groups of hundreds of people all at the same time, and then everybody shuts up and watches a movie, and then you do it again. And then you wind up in another crowd with a whole bunch of people moving in different directions. And I know that that's going to be in terms of how I manage my brain injury as a professional. That's definitely going to be my weak point. That's definitely going to be the area where I am most vulnerable. And for sure, a big part of the solution is going to be having my actors there with me. Definitely. It's going to be, Danielle, I'm sure, and Gerard pushing me around in a wheelchair to conserve energy, making sure that the job of getting to wherever we're supposed to be is handled so that I don't have to be thinking about that, moving my body and spending that energy, and then I can, give it to the audience when we get there and give it to the people we find along the way instead, not worry about so many things at once. Take the actual navigation off my plate, which is interesting because usually, and certainly before I got my brain injury, those kinds of sort of processing tasks were things I took for granted. I never imagined in my life that I would be in a place in my life where I had to budget that kind of energy and where I had to figure out how much it was going to cost me to walk from one place to another, or walk up a set of stairs or anything like that. But you're presented with all kinds of different challenges in production, and you have to find your way through them. You have to find your way around them. And this is just one more challenge that we have to overcome. Fortunately, I've got a great team around me, and I'm surrounded by people that I can trust with my life. That's been the saving grace throughout this entire process, is that my ensemble and the people that I work with are people that refuse to let the show down and refuse to let me down, and they believe in me just as much as I believe in them. And that's both given me the strength to overcome the immediate challenges that I face, and a lot of the help that I've gotten from my actors and folks like Johnny Durango, my DP. And at the same time, it's also been the motivation for me to, if not heal, at the very least mitigate and control my disability as much as possible. Because if you've got people like that in your life, you certainly don't want to fail them. You want to make sure that you succeed. And that has been, for me, probably the most important goal, is to ensure that the promises that I've made and the commitments that I made prior to the accident are fulfilled. And obviously, with any production, and certainly with Quantum Theory, when you're dealing with an independent development process, you're dealing with massive delays to begin with. You're dealing with a really, really long finance process. It takes a super long time to find and collect the people who can actually do the thing that you need them to, when you can't just throw endless amounts of money at the problem. So a big part of the challenge at least in the way that I see it, is making sure that I'm so on point and I'm providing what my ensemble needs from me to such a consistent and fantastic degree that at no point does anyone wonder if the time this is taking is because of the brain injury. Because that certainly would be the death knell, I think, of the company. If people started, coming forward with a vote of no confidence because of the accident, I don't think we could bounce back from that. So a big part of my job is to prove that the brain injury is not an absolute risk. It's just a risk. It's just something that went wrong that we need to address. And, not letting down the people who've put so much faith in me, not letting them believe it's okay if they see weakness. That's not the issue, and they're going to. It happens all the time. You probably haven't noticed, but my voice is tremoring a little bit right now. And at the same time, what I need to make sure of is that I still show up and I still do the office hours. Because a failure on that front suggests that a disabled person can't do the job. And I have to say, it's a very seductive conclusion to reach. A lot of people in Hollywood, and even people close to me, are willing to accept the possibility that something like this could be the end of a career, and of course it can, and so definitely making sure that I protect the people who have supported me from any doubts that could arise over whether or not this injury is going to hinder my competence has been a huge, huge, huge goal over the last 3 years. It's a big part of why we were so careful to shoot SAS times acceleration on time. When we did, it was just weeks after the injury, and I literally directed that web series on my hands and knees, sitting under Johnny's camera, just out of frame, and Gerard Marzilli, who's one of our ensemble actors who didn't perform in the web series, was literally my hands and feet that day. Every time I needed something, Gerard would go and get it. Every time I had to do something, Gerard would make sure, just to take my instruction and finish it. I had a hard time speaking too, and so I would whisper things to him, and he would speak them, and we got it done. It wasn't easy, but it got finished, and to this day, people think that particular web series was improv because it seems so natural and so light on its feet, when in reality, nobody's that funny off the top of their head. Of course, it's not improv. That whole thing was rehearsed, and what you're seeing when you watch SAS times acceleration is, frankly, sublime performance craftsmanship. It's a reflection of the exquisite acting of Tybee Diskin and Danielle K. Jones. And I like to think that I had a little bit to do with that as well. So that's how I've sort of been managing the brain injury, and and it's true. There's cognitive symptoms, largely when it comes to disparate pieces of information, like if someone's trying to tell me the sky is pink and someone tries to tell me the sky is blue, and then someone asks me to sign my name on something, I need to stop everything and break those 3 conversations down individually, as opposed to just knowing what to do next. And that's okay, because being a director, being a producer, I have the authority to stop everything and have people come to me one at a time. And that's how these things get managed. But I'm very fortunate, because this is definitely one of those injuries where very, very reasonably my actual decision-making ability or even my intellect could have been severely damaged, and I'm just as smart as I ever was, and I'm just as imaginative as I ever was. There's just, it's, the way I explain it to people is that it's like being 80 all of a sudden. It's like just flicking a switch. It's like those body switch movies. I just woke up in an 80-year-old body one day, and I have to make sure that I take care of all the things that an 80-year-old body needs taken care of. And as long as I do that, and as long as I support myself in all the ways that my body requires me to, everything comes out fine. That's pretty much what that's about. And how much did I talk? I talked for 20 minutes. We've got an additional 10 minutes. I'm not seeing anybody in the chat room. I said I would be here till 7. I should hang tight till 7. What else is there to discuss? Let me see if I've got any messages. See if anything pops into my head. I'm getting messages about the Loudmouth report, which is good. One of the things that VK Lynn is amazing at is social media. Right now she's retweeting all the stuff that we tweeted at her and letting everybody know what to do. I don't know if you guys are into hockey, but I do like hockey. I like the Boston Bruins. And they're off to a good start this season. I'm pretty excited by the Backes trade and the fact that we have the former captain of the Blues on the team. He's already proven himself to mesh very well with the Bruins play style, and it's gonna. Like a lot of Bruins fans, I'm sure I'm waiting to see what happens when Patrice Bergeron comes back on the team and has to fill a line with Marchand. Or I mean, I think he probably will get put back on the line with Marchand and Backes. I think that's probably what they're going to do. But Pastrnak is such a good player, and he plays so well on the front line that it's tempting to imagine Backes and Pastrnak and Marchand playing together for the rest of the season and having Bergie as the lead on the second line. I don't know. Let's find out. So what else do? I watch hockey. I have gotten into computer games much, much more avidly than I was before my brain injury. I like Blizzard games. I play Overwatch quite a bit. I play Heroes of the Storm quite a bit. I like StarCraft a lot, but I don't play it very much because I'm scared of other StarCraft players. I'm not very good at it, and I sort of like the base building, and I like putting together my own stuff and then going and exploring. I'm not so big on the competitive play. I've done some of the training, and I'm sort of working through the automatic training to get myself to the point where I'm able to send out units and explore and poke and start taking apart other people's bases, and I'll keep at it. I'll keep poking at it. But I probably it's going to be a while before I start playing other people on the internet in StarCraft. Even my friends beat me. It's terrible. It's pretty bad. But there's a couple things I really like about Blizzard. And one of them is one of the things I keep talking about. They're so good at they're craftspersonship and showpersonship. They're an excellent entertainment company. Now, nobody denies that Blizzard makes really fantastic video games, that they put a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of attention into everything that they release. And they maintain a very high level of quality as a result. And that's half the game. And the other half of the game is constantly supporting and communicating and maintaining your community, making sure that the people who engage you as an entertainer are welcomed at all times to the fullest degree possible, to make sure that they know what to expect, and to make sure that they are communicating their needs, and that to whatever degree that particular audience requires, that they know they're being heard and that they know that they're being responded to. Now, that's not to say necessarily that just because an audience demands one thing, you have to go and do that thing. Exactly. But you need to understand why the audience is asking for that thing. You have to understand where that need is coming from. You have to understand what the audience actually needs. You don't need to worry about what they think they need. And it's okay to give them a thing that surprises them as long as it's what they needed in the end. And that's, the release of Overwatch was a big risk for Blizzard that a lot of people talked about because they'd never done a first-person action shooter. But the success of it was centered around listening to what their community actually needs and finding a way to provide that entertained them and satisfied them as content creators. And bridging the gap in between what the audience was hungry for and what they required and what their personal ambitions were. I think a big part of why the Titan project at Blizzard probably didn't take off the way so many of the programmers and developers there were hoping it would, undoubtedly. Certainly, you don't put that much time and attention into something unless you're hoping it's going to be successful. And at the same time, it's not like the Blizzard audience needed a giant multiplayer online immersive experience. They already had World of Warcraft. They were satisfied in that regard. There wasn't a need within the audience for that because World of Warcraft did that job so well that it doesn't make sense to give the audience just more. Audiences don't always need more. Sometimes they need just a different kind of attention. Sometimes they need, if it better is good, you can always give an audience something much better than what they have, and they'll usually respond to it. But that's a really, really dicey proposition when you're dealing with the most successful online role-playing game in history, and one that was done with such undeniable craft. I'm not even much of a World of Warcraft fan myself, but I know that the people who play this game swear by it. To think that Titan's going to be better, like objectively, just because they want it to be, that's a huge risk. It's going to be so much better that people will just flock to it. It doesn't make sense. And on the other hand, I think that Blizzard identified a lot of things within the sort of first-person shooter world through the development of Titan, no doubt, that their audience was really missing and really wanted, and they found a simple, direct, very positive way to give it to them. So, in that respect, they were really listening to their audience. They didn't give them what they were demanding, and they didn't give them what they thought they needed. But they definitely gave them, at the end of the day, the thing that would satisfy that actual hunger, and that shows really good listening skills. It shows not just that they're constantly communicating with their audience, but that they're really hearing what they have to say and that they're putting a lot of effort into making sure that they approach those needs from a leadership position. They maintain their trust. That's obviously very important to them. And I think that's something every entertainer can aspire to. I think that's good. So yeah, I like Heroes of the Storm. If anybody wants to play games with me, my battle tag is Tekker10, TEKKER10, #1518. And I'd love to see you on the streams, on the video games. I'd love to see you here too at office hours. And we're coming up on 7 o'clock, so I think it's about time for me to sign off. And if you guys want to, if you want to come and ask me questions about independent film finance, anything related to 8-sided films, any of the projects that we're working on, or just film development, my experience, anything you like, really. My next streaming office hours is going to be Tuesday, the 1st of November at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And if you're in Los Angeles, I'll be at Republic of Pi just next week, next Tuesday, which I will go back into my calendar and get the date right now. Bear with one quick sec. Next Tuesday, the 25th of October. And my Los Angeles office hours are always at Republic of Pi, which is on Magnolia Boulevard, just east of the Lancashire Boulevard intersection. It's right next to the steak and cheese place and the Brickyard. So join me. Join me and ask your questions. And if you don't join me and ask your questions, I'm just going to keep rambling. So do it. Thank you for your time. If anybody who's checking in and watching this stream, I'm sure next week I'll find something to talk about. If you don't show up, but I think it would be better if people showed up and asked me questions about the business that we are in. We'll see you guys next week, and enjoy everything you're up to in the meantime. Take good care. Tennyson Stead out.